Welcome on into the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. This is episode number 42 of season 2026. We're taking a look at the round 16 preview today. We're going to preview all 7 matches coming up this weekend. We've got some good football coming up, hopefully some good football coming up. So we'll be going through all of that in today's episode. We'll also be looking at top 5 rated players by position so far this year using the All Aussie Rules rating system, as we do each and every Thursday episode. And then we'll round out the episode with our footy tips for this weekend. Hopefully we can find you 7 winners. I think we went 6 out of 7 last week, so let's try and go one better. If you're new around here, we do 2 podcasts every single week. Preview episode every Thursday, review episode every Monday. It goes on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. Make sure you give a follow or a subscribe, depending on your preferred platform. Don't forget to give the podcast a rating, leave comments, like the videos, all that sort of stuff. It's all appreciated. Let's jump in to the content today. We've got round 16 coming up. Let's jump into it. So, highest rated players so far this season using our All Aussie Rules rating system. As I said, we rate every single player, every single game based on 30 or so different stats. And this is their numbers when they're in these positions. So it doesn't count games when they move positions for these numbers. For those, I do post them sometimes elsewhere. Anyway, general defenders. Nick Blakey leads the way. Obviously didn't play last week. Had the bye. He stays on top, 120.19. Archie Roberts, currently injured. 116.71 is the second highest. Jack Sinclair, what is going on here? We're just injuries galore. 116.13. Wayne Malira in 4th place on a 114.81. And Bodie Ulant moves into the top 5 this week, jumping over John Noble for 111.18 is his rating, average rating after round 15. Key defenders, Cal Wilkie leads the way and has extended his lead a little bit this week. He was very good last week, a 138.14. James Sicily is number 2 with a 129.76. Tom McCartan sits in 3rd. He comes back into the team this week. Teams have just been announced for the Thursday night game. He is playing, and his rating is a 120.45. Nick Blakey, you'll notice he's both in the key defender and general defender stages. Pretty close to the same rating in both positions. He is just that good. 118.51. And Harris Andrews is a 116.91, sitting in 5th best key defender so far in 2026. Moving to the other end of the ground, and it's our forward line next. General forwards, we got Miller leading the way from the Gold Coast Suns, 110.07. Obviously, does play a fair bit of midfield time. Joel Frazier, similar sort of story, 108.39. Toby Green's a 101.35 and in 3rd spot. Darcy Wilson, 99.43 is in 4th. And Paul Curtis sits in 5th at the moment, 97.12. Key forwards, Josh Tracy continues to lead the way as he has done for pretty much the whole season this year, a 111.19. Last week, he dropped a little bit. I think he had about a 102 rating maybe, but he's been super most of this year. Jack Gunston obviously hasn't played last week. His average is a 104.23. I don't think we're going to see him again this week, is my feeling, but obviously his last year and this year have been super. This year even better than last year, which is crazy. Shannon Neal, 101.98, sits in 3rd spot. He does keep getting better and better as well. Logan Morris sits in 4th, 94.46, and Jeremy Cameron over the last 2 or 3 games has dropped from 3rd down to 5th. He was over 103 at one point, I think, and now he's down to a 94. So he has hit a bit of a rough patch over recent weeks, but still in the top 5, obviously. Coleman medalist from last season. Jumping into the midfield, inside midfielders next up. Isaac Heaney didn't play last weekend due to the bye, but sits on top at a 147.54. For context, last season Marcus Bontempelli was the highest rated player in the game in our system, and he was about a 154. So Isaac Heaney not that far off the pace of Bontempelli from last year. Jordan Dawson's number 2, a 139.77. His last 5-6 weeks have been huge. Bailey Smith didn't play, but he's a 134.03. Speaking of Bontempelli, he is number 4, 131.87. Zach Butters is in 5th with a 131.39. Marginally ahead of, I think, Nick Dacos is number 6. Outside midfielders, we've got Jace Burgoyne on a 102.02. Leading the way, Matt Carroll, who's obviously out injured for the rest of the season, is a 100.85. Jared Berry from the Lions, they didn't play on the weekend, but he's a 99.45. Harvey Thomas in 4th, 98.19. And Ed Langdon is number 5, 96.45. Only one position left, and it's your rucks. And we have 4 breakaway leaders, as we have had for pretty much the whole season. Max Gawn continues to be number 1. They have the bye this weekend, so we'll see if anyone can catch him. But he's a 143.57. I think he was a 146 last year. So pretty similar numbers again to last year for Maxi Gawn. Luke Jackson's a 139.94. The unicorn just keeps getting better and better, and he is an absolute gun. I would not be surprised to see him as the number 1 rated ruckman by the end of the year. Brodie Grundy, number 3, with a 135.41. Tristan Cherry is a 135.09. And back into 5th place is Tim English on a 109.72. But he is a mile behind those top 4 at the moment. And speaking of, he's dropped off on last year's numbers, quite a massive amount. He was number 2 rated ruckman using this rating system last year. So he's still got a bit of ground to make up to get anywhere near those sort of numbers this year. Top 10 players in the AFL so far this year. This is all positions, all games, all everything put together. Isaac Heaney leading the way, 147.5, as we've said. Max Gawn's number 2, about 4 rating points behind. Then Luke Jackson, another 4 behind. Jordan Dawson's in number 4. Cal Wilkie is number 5. Brodie Grundy is your number 6 player. Tristan Cherry, 7. Bailey Smith is 8. Marcus Bontempelli in 9th spot. And then 10th is Zach Butters after round 15. Let's jump into game by game now and do a little preview for each match. Thursday night is where we kick it off. It's going to be Brisbane. It's going to be Sydney. It's at the Gabba. Big game. 2 teams that have still pretty high hopes for the season, you'd have to think, even though Brisbane's form has not been sensational. This is a big week for them. And, every week's a big week for Sydney. They just keep performing. So that's going to be interesting. 2nd on the ladder, Sydney versus 8th on the ladder, Brisbane. It's going to be a good game, I think. We've got some numbers there on the screen. If you're watching this, if you're just listening to it, you won't obviously see it. But we've got some numbers there which are just using our rating system. Rating offense, so that's when it should actually read with ball, without ball, and then overall, because that's basically how it's worked out. So offense is with the ball, defense is without the ball, and then overall is offense minus defense. Form is overall over the last 5 weeks, and schedule difficulty is average opponent rating, with 1st being the hardest, 18th being the easiest draw. I think that makes sense. Let's jump into this game. Obviously, Sydney are the higher rated team so far this year. No real surprise. Another 2nd on the ladder. They've only lost, 2 games? 2 games this year so far. Is that right? Yeah, 2 games, 12 wins, 2 losses. They're flying. They're actually starting favourites for this game as well. They've played some good games with Brisbane over the recent years, and hopefully this is another one that's a cracker. Teams have been announced for this game so far already, because at time of recording, this is Wednesday. Obviously, the game's tomorrow night, Thursday night, but by the time this goes out, it'll be today. But the rest of the teams won't be out yet. Anyway, Ryan Lester's coming in for the Lions. Big in. Out goes Brain. So I think that's a positive change there for the Lions. For the Swans, some interesting changes. Tom McCartan comes back in from injury. Peter Ladham's coming in is an interesting one to play that backup ruck role. He's replacing Hayden McLean. And then the big one that's coming in, one that we're very excited about seeing, is Errol Goulden. He's back. One of the best players in the competition in my eyes, and he is back this week. So that's going to be huge for the Swans, I think. So McCartan, Goulden, Ladham's coming in. Matt Roberts, Harry Kyle, and Hayden McLean are the three outs. They met earlier this year, obviously, and round one, and Sydney won that comfortably. That was in Sydney, though, 44-point winners. Last time they met at the Gabba was round 22 of last season, and the Swans actually won that one by 2 points in a cracking finish. The matchup before that was back at the SCG, round one last year, and the Lions won that by 4 points. So that was the last time the Brisbane Lions beat Sydney. Obviously, if you want to go back to the meeting before that, it was a grand final day where Brisbane won by 60 points. Recent form of both teams, obviously, Brisbane coming off the bye last week. Before that, they'd won 2 games in a row, beating Gold Coast and Richmond, which just kind of steadied themselves after a really rough 4 weeks, including losses to Geelong, GWS, and Fremantle. We all know what happened in that GWS one. It was a disaster for them, but they have kind of steadied themselves with those 2 games going into the bye. And now, obviously, the bye with a little refresh, they'll be hoping they can come out and storm home in the back half of this season and make a run. They're still 8th on the ladder. They're not that far behind the top 4, so we're certainly not writing the Brisbane Lions off just yet, especially if they can get the win here against Sydney at home. Speaking of Sydney, they're flowing. 4 out of their last 5. I mean, about 9 out of their last 10, I think it is. They've won. There's been some close ones. Their week before the bye, they only beat Port Adelaide by 3 points. So that was not convincing at all, but they won it. The week before that, they only beat St Kilda by 2 points. Once again, not convincing. They trailed most of that game. Week before that, they smacked Richmond. Before that, they lost to Geelong in Geelong. And the week before that, they beat Collingwood. So their form's still pretty solid. It's not maybe going smooth sailing, but they're getting the job done, which is pretty important when it comes down to it. Just getting those narrow wins, they all add up. Other things to take note of in this game, obviously the Errol Goulden in is an interesting one. I mean, we can't expect the world from him in his first game of the season, but he is a very good player. Oh, it's not his first game of the season, sorry. He played the first 2 weeks, but first game in most of the season. We all know what he's capable of. He's gun week in, week out. And we expect to see a really good game from him. And how that affects those around him will be interesting to see, because typically he is very good at making those around him, and especially in the forward line, look very, very good. His delivery, his run, his carry, all that sort of stuff is very important. But they've been getting a lot of that from players like Nick Blakey, so we'll see how that rolls out come tomorrow night or Thursday night. Both teams similar in many ways, especially like contested football, time in possession, time in forward half. They all are well above average in those areas. But the big difference is Brisbane a massive clearance team. They're pretty much number 1 in the competition at +9 per game, whereas Sydney actually go negative in clearances overall. But what Sydney do better than anybody else is the turnover game. So both positive and negative, they give up and they take a lot of intercepts. So they give up a lot of turnovers. They also gain a lot of intercepts. That is pretty much Sydney across the board. However, what they do positively is they score heavily from turnover pretty consistently. But they also don't concede from turnover, even though they do give up a lot of turnovers in a game of football. Even though, they don't give up. They do give up. A lot of turnovers. They don't concede from them. So that's where their defensive setup and their ability to cover those turnovers is really, really good and better than anyone else in the AFL. We all know they can transition, they run, they carry, they get a lot of inside 50s. Brisbane also get quite a lot of inside 50s in a game of football as well. So um, I expect it to be a very fast paced game. I expect both teams to come out absolutely flying on Thursday night, ready to go. And hopefully we get a cracking game of football. That's how I see it happening. Let me know what you think, of course, in the comments below. Let's jump on to Friday night football. This is one that looked like it was going to be probably better than it perhaps looks now at the start of the season. Although these two teams did meet in opening round and the Giants did win, but you'd say it's probably going to be a tough one here for them. Hawks will start massive favourites. It's at the MCG. We obviously don't have teams yet for this one, but yeah, we'll go with the rest of the game. Obviously, Hawthorn is the higher rated team so far this year in most stats, offensively, defensively, overall. Form over the last 5 weeks, somehow Giants actually are above Hawthorn. That is helped massively by that Brisbane game where GWS played out of their skins. But they also beat Melbourne the following week, which was a really good win. But then they have lost to Saints and Carlton the last 2 games since the bye. Whereas Hawthorn have won 3 of their last 4, with the loss to the Bulldogs by 6 points. They also lost 5 weeks ago to Melbourne as well. Funnily enough, played Melbourne, 5 games ago? They play Melbourne again next week in round 17. Just a little random little number for you. Scheduled difficulty. Hawthorn have had a much tougher draw than GWS, according to our numbers. 4th hardest in the comp for the Hawks. And of teams that are in the top 4, I think, or top 6 even, I think they're the only team that's really had a really difficult draw. The Giants have had the 16th hardest, or therefore the 3rd easiest draw in the AFL, according to our numbers, and still sit 13th, which is a little bit of a worrying sign for them. I know they've got plenty of excuses with injuries and whatnot. The last 2 weeks have been pretty big for them because they were 6-6 at the bye. If they had won both of those games coming out of the bye, they'd be 8-6 right now and would be saying that finals is definitely a chance for them. Those 2 losses now makes it quite difficult at 6 and 8. They'd need to win probably 6 more games. It's not going to be easy for them. So that's where that sits. As we mentioned, Giants did beat them earlier this year. That was opening round. It was a pretty decent performance from the Giants, to be honest, but maybe Hawthorn just didn't show up on first day of the year. They met, obviously, elimination final last year. That was also in Sydney, but Hawthorn won that one after starting that game really well. They won by 19. The time before was round 3 down in Tassie last year. Hawks won that one as well. So they have won the recent history quite well. The Hawks, between the 2 teams outside of the opening round this year, they'd won the 2 before that. I think just on numbers alone, based on what we've seen this year, Hawthorn probably just win this. I think there's just too many injury concerns and just not enough players playing at consistent peak level for the Giants. I mean, arguably 3 of their top 10 players haven't played a game yet this season. Tom Green, Darcy Jones, and Josh Kelly. And then you chuck in the fact that they've had other injuries of players in and out of team and whatnot. Jack Buckley's missed a lot. Sam Taylor's obviously missed a lot. It's just made it really quite difficult for them to succeed on a regular level. Numbers suggest that this should go the way of the Hawks. They should probably win the clearance game. Contested footy will probably be pretty even. Possession numbers and time in forward half is definitely going the way of the Hawks. The Giants are going to rely on that transition game. If they can succeed and have a successful day on the transition, maybe they can get a bit of a score going, but that is going to be their one key to success. And Hawthorn have many avenues to a victory in this one, I think. So we jump into Saturday football and we kick off at Marvel Stadium. It's Blues, West Coast, 14th v 16th on the ladder, but um, one team heavily on the rise and the other one slightly on the rise. So maybe, maybe not too bad of a game. Who knows? If this was in WA, I think this would be one of the games of the round. But it's not, unfortunately. It's at Marvel Stadium. So, Baggers flying. West Coast, not playing terrible football. You look at our ranking system, offensively, defensively, overall, Carlton are the better team between the two. Form over the last 5 games is crazy. 4th for Carlton, 7th for West Coast. Who would have thought that? 14th and 16th on the ladder, and the form of both teams pretty good. Schedule difficulty, both teams mid-pack. 9th for Carlton, 7th for West Coast. Yeah, crazy. Absolutely crazy. What else can we talk about here? Carlton have a really good record against West Coast. They've won the last 6 meetings between the two teams. You've got to go right back to 2021 for the last time the Eagles beat the Blues. Most things suggest that this should probably be one-way traffic throughout most of this game. You'd have to think. Can't say it for certain, but you'd have to think. It's been a couple of years since they met in Melbourne because I'm pretty sure last year when they met for Carlton's home game, it was gather round. But Carlton did absolutely smash the Eagles in that game. They also met in the West last year, and the Blues won that one sort of comfortably, 34-point winners. What else? Blues, they've won 5 in a row after being 1-8. They're now 6-8. Top 10 is a real possibility with the run home they have as well. Big win last week, important win up in Sydney. 3 weeks ago or 3 games ago, big win against Geelong. Things are just certainly on the way up for the Blues right now. There's no doubt about it. And I mean, West Coast are putting together some decent form. You look at their last 5 games, beat GWS, lost to Collingwood by 10 points, beat the Bombers by 30, lost to Port Adelaide by 6, lost to Kangaroos by 1. So there is, like, across a 5-week period, the worst result was a 10-point loss in Melbourne to a team that finished in the top 4 last year. Things are certainly on the way up. This will be a tough one for them, no doubt, but the Eagles, don't write them off just yet. You look at the stat sheet, most things point towards Carlton. Time of possession, contested football, clearances, Carlton not great at this year, but they're still way better than West Coast overall. Setting clearances will be interesting, I think, in this game. Both teams been pretty good at it recently. West Coast probably going to rely heavily on points from turnovers, whereas Carlton are one of the better teams at points from stoppage. So we'll see how that shapes up. Inside 50 numbers not too dissimilar, but creating shots and creating good shots at goal is something that Carlton are certainly better at than West Coast throughout this season. So that's going to be tough for this West Coast defense, especially missing Ginby down back is going to be a bit of a hurdle that the Eagles need to get over. And that, with it being in Melbourne and most other things, you just have to probably be tipping Carlton in this. Not super confident, I mean, ever, but they should be too strong. It would be a very Carlton thing to do to go and lose this game and then not win another game all year, but that is not going to happen. They're going to win this. They're going to probably win most of their next 4 weeks as well, potentially. And all of a sudden, top 10 is genuinely a really big shot for the Blues. So that's how I see this one. I don't think there's anything else to go too deep into on that one. So we'll jump into the next game, which is the evening game. It's Collingwood-Richmond at the MCG. 11 v 17th on the ladder. Two teams that it's hard to know exactly where Collingwood's at. Richmond, I think we're pretty comfortable in knowing that they're probably one of the worst 2 teams in the AFL right now. Them and the Bombers are clearly 17 and 18. Richmond are 17th on the ladder, but across our stat sheets, they rate as 18th, so 18th offensively, 18th defensively, 18th across the last 5 games. The only thing they're not 18th in is schedule difficulty. They've had the 5th hardest schedule in the AFL so far, according to our numbers, but Collingwood have had the 3rd hardest, according to those same numbers. Offensively, Collingwood are 7th, defensively 11th, overall 9th, so mid-pack. Their last 5 weeks hasn't been bad, though. They in that period they've had a 6-point loss to Sydney, who have only lost 2 games this year. They beat West Coast. That wasn't overly impressive. Lost by 4 points to the Bulldogs. Lost by 8 points to Melbourne, who haven't lost at the MCG this year. And then last week beat Port Adelaide by 26 points. So their 5-week period, not terrible. Only the 2 wins, but really you could see them winning all 5 of those games. Like, they were certainly in with a shot in all 5 of them. The Tigers, on the other hand, their form has not been great at any point of this year, but they did get the win against Essendon 4 games ago. But since then, smacked by 114 points to Sydney. 35 points to Brisbane wasn't terrible down in Hobart. And then last week, 25 points to North Melbourne. But they just struggled to kick a goal. And has been their issue at multiple points this season. Their accuracy was terrible. 6 goals, 12. You're not going to win too many games of football doing that. And going up against Collingwood this week, who is one of the harder teams to score against in the AFL, that might be an issue for Richmond here, is how are they going to kick a winning score? They got 48 last week against North Melbourne, who are not well known for their defensive stopping ability. So that shall be interesting. 3 weeks ago, they only got 56 against Sydney. Other than that, they're in the 70s and 80s, which suggests it's going to be tough for them to kick a winning score. Positive factor, though, for them is Collingwood are not a team that score massively too often. Granted, 2 of their last 5 games, they have actually made it to the 90s, but yeah, it's hard to see a world where they score enough against this Collingwood defence. History of the matchup, Collingwood have won the last 3. And speaking of low scoring, those 3 games, Richmond have scored 49, 67, 57, so not much. Collingwood have scored 93 both of the last 2 times they've played the Tigers. Nick Dacos has also been best on ground probably in those last 2 games as well, so including, according to our rating system, his highest rated game of 2025 was against the Tigers last year. So, yeah, there's that as well. Looking at the stats, both teams pretty terrible at the clearance game, so that will be a fascinating watch. Although some weeks Collingwood do bring it out when they need to. I don't think this is a game that they will, so we'll see how that plays out. Contested football, both teams pretty average at that as well, both in heavy negatives. Time in possession will end up in Collingwood's favour in this game. I just don't see a world where Richmond beat anyone in time in possession, really. They just don't get their hands on the football enough. So it feels like there's going to be times in this game where Collingwood just have the football for long periods, and whether Richmond can withstand that or not, we'll see. Yeah, that's pretty much this game. It's certainly not the most watchable game of the weekend, but I mean, if you go for Collingwood or Richmond, maybe it will be. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else to go through. Collingwood should be too strong, I think. Saturday night, we get a good one. It's the showdown. Hopefully it's a good one. Second showdown of the year. Obviously, the last one changed lead like 3 times in the last 2 minutes, including a game winner with like 10 seconds to go. Crows won that one by a point, and that was a ripper. 5th on the ladder for the Crows, 15th for the Power. 2 of the last 3 showdowns have been absolute rippers. Round 9 last year, Adelaide won by 5 points. It went down to the wire. And obviously the round 8 matchup earlier this year. The problem is the one in between was the biggest margin in showdown history when Adelaide beat Port Adelaide by 98 points. So that's in my head as well. And the Crows are starting to get going, if I do say so myself. If you look at our numbers over the last 5 games, they are the second highest rated team in the competition. They've gone 4-1 in that period. Comfortable wins against Kangaroos, comfortable win against the Bulldogs. Beat Melbourne last week. They also beat Geelong by 1 point, and their only loss was a 9-point loss to Hawthorn down in Launceston. So certainly not a bad performance, that one. They are flying. They're getting better and better each week as well. It feels like Jordan Dawson's playing outstanding football. On the other side, Port Adelaide, they feel like they're going the other way. They've had a lot of close losses this year, including that Sydney one 2 games ago where they lost by 3 points. But injuries and a hard toll of a long season of close losses feels like it's starting to stack up on them. They're going to have to come out and absolutely play their best football, which is a possibility. It's the showdown. If any game's going to get you up as a Port Adelaide player in the home and away season, it's going to be a showdown. But it just feels like maybe this season has reached that breaking point, and they're going to find it really hard to stay in games in the back half of the year. That's how I see it. It doesn't mean it necessarily will be how it plays out. So Adelaide have won the last 3 matchups between the two teams. Last time Port Adelaide won was 2024 round 23. Obviously, Port Adelaide went on to make a prelim final that year. They finished second in the home and away season. So a lot different Port Adelaide and a lot different Adelaide from that last time that the Power won. Looking at the numbers, Port Adelaide actually a really good clearance team. Adelaide is not. So that is one area where Port Adelaide can potentially get themselves on top. However, they don't score much from stoppage, Port Adelaide, even though they are that good clearance team. And that's one factor I think they need to tidy up a little bit, is their ability to score from the clearances, because they are really good at getting clearances. Another fascinating thing between these two teams is Adelaide averaged 10 points more per game than Port Adelaide. However, Port Adelaide actually averaged more shots than Adelaide in a game. So their accuracy throughout this season has been letting them down, Port Adelaide. And that's never going to be more evident than the fact that they get more shots but score less points than Adelaide. So major factor there. Interestingly, they also concede less shots than Adelaide do as well. So I know it's all irrelevant and kind of moot in some factors, but it's just interesting to note across what are we 15 rounds that's how it's shaped up. When you look at it, Port Adelaide have had one of the easiest schedules in the AFL. The latest part of their season has made it a bit tougher. Through the first 8-10 weeks, they were the easiest schedule in the competition. They're currently, the fourth easiest, whereas Adelaide are mid-pack, sitting 11th hardest in the competition. You just think that Adelaide has the class right now. Port Adelaide have too many injuries, and it's hard to see them being able to really match it if Adelaide are anywhere near their best. That's Saturday night football. We jump into Sunday football. There's 2 games this week on Sunday. We kick off with North Melbourne and the Bombers. This will be at Marvel Stadium, Sunday afternoon football. I think a 3:15 kickoff. 10th on the ladder, the Kangaroos. 18th, the Bombers. This is a big, big opportunity for the Roos to get their season well and truly going. They're sitting just in the top 10 right now. Obviously, top 10 play finals this year. And going up against the bottom of the ladder Bombers is a big, big chance to make their move and get another win under their belt and get them one win closer to a finals campaign after a few really tough years. You're looking at our numbers. Offense 13th v 17th, so neither team great at scoring. Defensively, without the ball, Kangaroos actually very good, 4th best. Bombers once again 17th. Overall 8th v 17th, so the Kangaroos well and truly in contention of top 10. Going by that, form over the last 5 games, 11th for Kangaroos, 16th for the Bombers. Kangaroos have actually won 3 of their last 5. Um, 2 of them was a 1-point win over West Coast and a 25-point win over Richmond, so nothing too great there. They did have that 124-point loss to Fremantle, which really hurt their numbers, obviously. So, yeah, while that one's in there, they're not going to have great form numbers just because of that one game. On the other side of the fence, Essendon, even though they've gone 0-5 across their last 5, 16th, it's not terrible. They haven't got that close to many, other than Carlton 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago now, when they played pretty well and almost won that game. Their other 5 have not been great, but they haven't been terrible, is basically the story of their last 5 weeks. And then schedule difficulty. Kangaroos have had the easiest schedule so far this year, and now they play the 18th best team in the competition. So, how does that make sense? I don't know. The team that's had the easiest schedule is going to have an even easier schedule after this week. On the other side of the fence, the Bombers had a reasonable run in terms of that, but injuries and just class has really curtailed their season in many ways. Looking at the history of these two teams, Essendon had a really great record against North Melbourne up until round 3 this year. Kangaroos finally broke that streak of, like, I can't remember how many games it was, like 13 or something in a row that the Bombers had won. The Kangaroos broke that earlier this year. It wasn't pretty, but they did win it by 12 points. Since that point, you probably think Kangaroos have maybe got slightly better, whereas the Bombers, you cannot say the same thing for. You look across the stat sheet here, clearances, contested football, scoring, shots, inside 50s, most things look like going the way of the Kangaroos, who average 2 goals extra offensively than the Bombers per game and also concede a goal and a half less. So most things probably tell you that the Kangaroos should be winning this game of football. If the Bombers came out and played their best game of football this year, hypothetically, they would be in with a chance, but they're going to need to play their absolute best to have any shot. Can we see that happening? Probably not. They might be relying on somebody taking over. They don't have many options for that, in my opinion. Zach Merritt having a blinder of a game would be the most likely. But I don't know. I just don't see it happening based on what we've seen. Maybe someone up forward kicking a bag of 6 or something could give them that chance. No Tristan Cherry. Certainly will make it for an interesting ruck battle for this one as well. But Kangaroos should be the obvious pick, but hey, if you want to tip the Bombers, go ahead. Sunday afternoon, evening sort of time frame over in the West, it's Fremantle v Gold Coast at Optus Stadium. Number 1 on the ladder v number 9. This is a crucial game for the Gold Coast Suns. There's no doubt about it. Their form has not been great. They need to win. There's no doubt. They just can't keep losing games of football. They are in serious trouble at the moment of falling out of the top 8 or top 10. Sorry. I think going by our scheduled difficulty ratings, they have the hardest remaining schedule in the AFL. So, or right up there at least. So, it's pretty important that they win games. Some of these games now that they're not maybe expected to win, and that starts here against Fremantle over in the West. It's a big game. Offensively, 3rd best versus 9th best. Defensively, 1st in Fremantle versus 8th. Overall, 2nd best versus 7th. That's across the year. Form numbers, though, over the last 5 games, 1st in the AFL Fremantle, 10th in the AFL for the Gold Coast Suns. And schedule difficulty, interestingly here, Fremantle have had the 2nd easiest schedule. Gold Coast Suns have had mid-pack, 8th hardest. So that's that. First time they've met since the elimination final of last year, which was over in the West, and Gold Coast Suns beat the Dockers by a point on that day. So Fremantle will probably be looking to get a little bit of revenge on that, I guess. The 3 times before that, Fremantle had beaten Gold Coast. You look at down the stat sheet, most things suggest Fremantle, a better clearance team, much better clearance team. Much better contested football team. Both teams like having the football in their hands, but Fremantle more so than Gold Coast, which is interesting because Gold Coast is a team that is one of the most, but Fremantle is, I think, number one in that regard. Scoring wise, is all Fremantle. Shots scoring against massively Fremantle. They're the number one defense in the competition, really. Um, they concede 20 points less than the Gold Coast Suns do per game. So it's hard to suggest that Gold Coast are going to win this. The one thing that they potentially have on their side is at some point it's not definite by any means, but it happens most years that teams that are way out in front just hit a little lull in their back half of the year. It hits most years. Collingwood it did last year. 2024 it hit Sydney in a 4 or 5 week period, including a 100 point loss to Port Adelaide. 2023 it happened to Collingwood. It just tends to happen most seasons that teams do hit a lull at some point. Will it happen to Fremantle this week? I don't know, but it is potentially going to happen. Just a potential. I don't think it's guaranteed. They are the better team from everything we've seen this year. They should be winning this game of football and probably comfortably. But I wouldn't be hanging my hat on that, and I wouldn't be falling out of my seat if Gold Coast were to win. I know that's kind of sitting on the fence a little bit, but it's just you can never fully set things in stone. Even though Fremantle haven't lost since round one, Gold Coast have lost their last 4 games. They were 7-3 and looked destined for top 4, and they were 40 points up on North Melbourne to go to 8-3, and then they threw that game away and lost by 6 points. Then they lost to Brisbane, then they lost to Geelong, then they lost to Hawthorn. So the last 3 games have been against pretty decent opposition. But at some point, you've got to beat these teams. You've got to start winning some of these games to make top 10. Otherwise, things could be looking really bad for Gold Coast Suns. If they were to lose this one, I think potentially they have Collingwood next week. That is on the Gold Coast. But if they were to lose both of those, then their season is very fast slipping away. I don't think that's what will happen, but it's just a hypothetical of what could happen if the Gold Coast Suns aren't careful over the next few weeks. So that's all 7 games this weekend. Obviously, 4 teams have the bye in Geelong, Melbourne, St Kilda, and the Bulldogs. This is our tips coming up for this weekend. We're 86 out of 128 for the year. So not too bad. Our margins were very accurate on 5 out of 7 games last week. Let's see if we can do even better this week. We're going Brisbane v Sydney. We're going for the Lions. Little bit of an upset. Not a massive upset, just a little bit of an upset by 5 points for the Lions. I think Sydney probably are the better team. I just think Brisbane have a lot to play for right now to prove to themselves and to everybody else that they are still a team that is a genuine threat for this AFL Premiership. Hawthorn Giants, you have to go Hawthorn in Melbourne. I've got them by 28. Carlton West Coast. Carlton are flying at the moment. It's been a while since we've seen them actually smack a team around a little bit. I think this might be the chance. 41 points. Collingwood Richmond, I've got Collingwood by 36. I don't think they score enough to win by any more than that. Port Adelaide, I have to go with Adelaide. I've got them by 20 points. I think Port Adelaide will put up a pretty good fight for what they've got, but I think the injuries and the season is just going to take too much of a toll on them. North Melbourne against Essendon. North Melbourne have to win this game of football in so many ways, but they have to win. 29 points I've got them. It probably ends up being really close, though. And then to round out the weekend, I think Gold Coast will put up a really good fight against the Dockers, but I think Fremantle's class and just that forward line is dangerous, bruv. The midfield and forward line, it's so scary. Fremantle by 17 to round out the weekend. Let me know your tips in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on round 16. That is a wrap on another episode of the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. That's episode number 42 of 2026. Probably just gone past episode 200 ever of the podcast, I reckon. I don't know the exact numbers, but I think we did 81 the first year, 87 the second year, so that's probably 211-ish episodes. Make sure you do follow if you enjoy this sort of content on whichever platform you like. Go check out all the social medias, all Aussie Rules everywhere. Appreciate you for being here. I really do. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, all that sort of stuff. Let me know what your thoughts in the comments. And we'll be back with the next episode on Monday, reviewing all these 7 matches. Plenty of content all over the place, so go check it all out. Plenty coming out for the rest of the year as we run towards the final series for 2026. Catch us next time.